hostilities, the Soviet Union and its agents have destroyed the independence and democratic character of a whole series of nations in Eastern and Central Europe.
After the World War II, the global competition in international arena made U.S. relationship between the Soviet Union deteriorate quickly, and this led to the situation of polarized politics. The Cold War, which started in 1945, it contained strong political and military tension between the two poles instead of large-scale wars. The U.S. President Nixon was elected in 1968, and he liked to manage the domestic politics of world affairs. Kissinger, who was the foreign policy advisor of Nixon, he also published a philosophy, Realpolitik. It states that foreign policy should be based solely on consideration of power, not ideals or moral principles. The philosophy marks that America not only struggle with the major communist countries, but also the powerful nations of the global. The confrontation largely meant negotiation, military engagement. Also, the tentative is a policy aimed at easing Cold War tensions. Nixon was the first president not only to visit China, but also another country of Soviet Union, Moscow. In February 1972, U.S. President Nixon made his historic trip to China. He controlled sooner than most the huge potential of China. However, because China recognized that the Soviet Union had tight relationship to the West countries, China officially broke ties with the USSR in 1916. For that, the visit was a huge success with the American public results, for it opened up diplomatic and economic relations. 3 months later, Nixon and Brezhnev signed SALTI treaty strategic limitation talks, which limitation of arms and working for years. Besides, U.S. withdrew troops and America's involvement in Vietnam. The new President Ford travels a rough road in the way of being a U.S. president. Watergate scandal led Nixon lost many of public support and ended his presidency. After Ford became a president, the U.S. economy had gone from bad to worse. He unsuccessfully asked public to cut back use of oil, gas, save energy. So he then tried to cut inflation through a tight money policy, which cuts government spending, urged higher interest to reduce credit. Continually battles Democratic Congress with own economic agenda. Ford continues negotiations with China and Soviet Union, also cooperates with Eastern, Western Europe, and Southeast Asia. The next president of U.S., Jimmy Carter, promised to restore integrity to presidency. First of all, he holds fireside chats on radio and television to in touch with people like Roosevelt did before. Secondly, the energy crisis, the most important issue facing the nation. He offers energy proposals. Oil and gas producer states, automakers resist, and also passed the National Energy Act, which encourages conservation U.S. energy source, conservation cut foreign oil dependence. Jimmy Carter also sought lots of ways to help the economy in Middle and East, but the economic crisis actually worsens. Due to violence in Middle East creates food shortage, so OPEC raises prices. Carter tried to various methods, however none of work. He gave the Malaise speech. In 1980, the inflation arose 14%, result to standard of living jobs and people lose confidence. Therefore, he tried to change the economic situation. From 1950s, automation, foreign competition reducing manufacturing jobs. Also, service sector expands. Higher paying jobs for require education skills. Therefore, high energy costs, foreign competition, and computerized production lead companies to eliminate tens of thousands of jobs. Carter not only regulates the U.S. economy, but also let people have more civil rights, basically freedoms. He hired more African Americans, women than previous presidents. Unfortunately, many civil rights groups are disappointed because few laws passed. The most important thing is President Jimmy Carter used the Panama Canal. He lies in Central America. However, Panamanians resist split country into 2 different foreign powers. 1977, treaty gives control of Canal to Panama on December 31, 1990. Agreements improve relation between U.S. and Latin America. U.S. foreign affair for the Panama Canal, but also for the U.S. military action to overthrow and arrest the General Manuel Antonio Noriega due to the drug trafficking. 1989, he was on charge of involving international drug smuggling and was sent to trial by U.S. military forces. After his removal, U.S. was blamed for intervening other countries' politics. However, most Panamanians were pleased for it. During Cold War, U.S. not only paid its interest on Panama, but also in the whole Central America. Central America played an important role in U.S. foreign affairs and policies during the Cold War period, and the United States also concerned about pressuring socialist governments and helping the government-friendly countries in Central America. Nicaragua was a great example for U.S. reaction to oppose the socialist countries, especially the Soviet Union. In early 20th century, the United States sent military forces to Nicaragua in order to protest U.S. investments. The United States helped the dictator Anastasio Somoza become powerful in Nicaragua before they left. However, the Somoza family had ruled Nicaragua for a long time, and they did many horrible things, such as assassinating their political rivals to ensure their control in Nicaragua. Then the tensions in Nicaragua between citizens and governments deteriorated. Thus, the Civil War started. The people who opposed the Somoza family's rule, called Sandinistas, fought against the National Army of Nicaragua. 1979, after Sandinistas succeeded in opposing Somoza's dictatorship, the United States decided to send economic aid to Nicaragua, which was similar to the Soviet Union. However, due to U.S. contradiction with Soviet Union, in 1981, President Reagan claimed that Nicaragua was the outpost of Soviet Union and might export revolution to other countries in Central America, and violated U.S. benefits and influence in Central America. The United States turned its support to guerrilla forces, the Contras, the opposite forces of Sandinistas, even though the Congress had passed violent amendments banning military aid to the Contras for 2 years. However, Reagan's administration still found ways to negotiate an aid to the Contras. 1990, February 25th, the election of new president finally resulted the division of Nicaragua in order to solve the disputes between Sandinistas and Contras. During Cold War period, United States also overthrew the pro-Cuba government instead of a friendlier government to United States by sending troops directly to Grenada, with the pay of 18 U.S. soldiers' lives. However, President Reagan announced that this invasion was necessary in order to defend U.S. security. Approaching to the end of the Cold War, U.S. movements were not only focused on Central America but also in Middle East. Terrorists were always a big problem in the world. During the Reagan presidency, there was a big scandal related to the terrorist action and made Reagan into trouble. 1983, several Americans were kidnapped in Lebanon by Iran terrorists. U.S. denounced Iran and urged U.S. allies not to sell arms to Iran for its war against Iraq. Later in 1985, Reagan also declared that there would be no concessions to terrorists. However, the breaking news about Reagan approaching the sale of arms to Iran in exchange of 7 American hostages' lives shocked people. The following case about the direct violation of the Boland Amendments was much more unbelievable, and many staffs in Reagan administration were involved in these scandals. 1990s, the Persian Gulf War turned public attention to Iraq due to the conflicts on the territories of Kuwait. Saddam Hussein, the president of Iraq, had claimed that the oil-rich nation of Kuwait was part of Iraq for several times, and later the Iraq troops invaded a disputed area claimed by Kuwait. They continued to head to Saudi Arabians and dreamed to control it as well. This might threaten U.S. oil supplies, thus U.S. announced the Operation Desert Storm to liberate Kuwait from Iraqi control. After a series of military actions, Kuwait was liberated from Iraq. There were 2 superpower countries in the world during the Cold War period, were the United States and Soviet Union. Their different social structures lead to many disputes between them, and it seemed that their disputes were competition might last forever. However, at the end of 1980s, the situation changed gradually. April 1989, Chinese university students gathered in Tiananmen Square and expressed their dissatisfaction on the communist government for the struggle of democracy. Even though this demonstration was ended by the national military forces, it showed the struggle failure of the communism. October 1989, East Germany repudiated their communist government and opened the Berlin Wall. This meant the end of division of Germany. December 1991, 49 Russian republics declared their independence from the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union collapsed, following with the end of the Cold War. The Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev tried to raise the USSR power and help the economy in the 1980s by releasing the GLaDOS, which allowed open criticism of the Soviet government and took some steps toward freedom of the press. He also called for less government control of the economy, the introduction of some private enterprise, and steps toward establishing a democratic government in the Soviet Union, which reflected the failure of the communism. However, his reconstruction of the Soviet Union did not stop the collapse. The fall of the Soviet Union finally ended the Cold War and laid the world into a new era of friendship and partnership.